In the modern day context, where we're hyper aware of false news and misinformation, there's a subtlety that we overlook: the language that media uses. Now, according to Language and the Media, published by the Cambridge University Press, the media are important social institutions. They are crucial presenters of culture, politics, and social life, shaping as well as reflecting how these are formed and expressed. Media discourse is important for both what it reveals about a society and for what it contributes to the character of society. Though we have diverse sources of news thanks to globalization and social media, we don't see the powerful campaigns and think tanks behind certain movements. This makes it so that even certain unbiased medias may be subconsciously influenced into using the same biased language as bigger influential news sources. In the wake of the current genocide happening in Palestine, which is being broadcasted internationally, journalists and sociologists who have been following this imperial project from the beginning shine a light on how language is being used more than ever to push forward certain ideologies and movements. To unpack such a heavy topic, let's start with facts. According to The Jewish State, a book published in 1896 by Theodor Herzl, who's the founder of Israel, as well as the Balfour Declaration in 1917, Israel was created for two main reasons. Number one, Herzl, a secular, non-religious Jew, wanted to establish a Jewish state in response to European anti-Semitism. So this was in response to a racial issue more so than a religious one. So during a time that Jews, Muslims, and Christians were peacefully coexisting in multiple regions in the Arab world, Europe was undergoing an anti-Semite problem, pushing Jews to seek refuge elsewhere. This is important to note when we live in a modern context that tries to reverse the narrative. Arab Jews always lived in the Arab world and didn't need to initiate a migration, so why do we now have European Jews migrating to an Arab country? Of course, we can also dismantle the religious discourse that the migration was put in place because Jerusalem is the promised land of the Jews, because this was just a publicity stunt. We know this since the founders of Israel were all either secular Jews or just not Jews at all, making the religious motive void of meaning. The second reason for which Israel was created was so that the UK and now the US could maintain geopolitical control in the Middle East. Of course, for the average person who just started reading the news headlines on October the 7th, their reality is very different. They see Palestine at worst as a terrorist state and at best as a victim of some nuanced conflict. According to Palestine and Israel Representation in the National and International News Media, a critical discourse study by Suwarno and Weining Sehayu, findings show that both mainstream medias have similarities, as if more favors representing Palestine as the victim of the conflict rather than Israel as a war criminal nation. We can observe this easily by looking at the wording used in some mainstream medias. As stated earlier in the Cambridge Press quote, media is a huge social institution that shapes the reality of citizens around the world. With globalization, the issue of language in media becomes even more critical, because instead of affecting a specific population, propaganda can easily become a global crisis. And here I'm not referring to propaganda only in the typical sense of misinformation, but also the shaping of social norms, public opinion, and what's considered moral and immoral. One of the most recent examples of this?
It's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed.
These are not refugees from Syria. These are Christians, they're white, they're very similar.
Like Iraq or Afghanistan, this is a relatively civilized, relatively European city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
What's compelling is just looking at them, the way they're dressed. These are prosperous, I'm loath to use the expression, these are prosperous middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
Let me show you what Bulgaria's Prime Minister said about refugees. I'm quoting. These people are intelligent, they're educated people. This is not the refugee wave we have been used to. People we were not sure about their identity. People with unclear pasts who could have been even terrorists.
Subtlety in the language we use is the root cause of multiple issues around the world. We're not born with racism in our hearts, but when we grow up hearing news being told in a certain way, it shapes how a society thinks and fosters the creation of negative or simply false connotations to certain peoples. Moving forward, it's important that we breed curiosity in our soul and question the frameworks that have become stagnant through socialization or recurrent media narratives. When we notice slight biases or hateful discourse, we must question the source before taking them to be true. Is there a hidden agenda, or is this an objective depiction of reality?